Good morning, Fresh Baked. Today I wanted to do something a little different with our video today, something that maybe we don't get enough of right now, and that is a video that has nothing to do with our current environment, for lack of a better phrase. I try to use those words specifically. I don't know why, but just saying it out loud bums me out. But today we're going to spend some time talking about the way we feel when we arrive at Disneyland. In yesterday's video, I asked you guys to tell me, when does your Disneyland day start? And I got quite a few responses, more than I was actually expecting to get, and some really good ones, some thoughtful ones, and some ones that I would have expected, I guess. For example, Krista Acevedo says that her Disney day starts when she wakes up at 4 a.m., drives 5 hours south to Anaheim, and then wakes up everybody on their way to go get Starbucks. And that sounds like a wonderful way to, like, that's excitement. And that's what I'm talking about, is that excitement of getting up in the morning and getting your friends together. And for me, a lot of that, all that has to do with anticipation, and building up to the arrival. Jay Vendetta says that his Disneyland day starts as soon as he books his trip. And I am envious of that, because, well, I don't get to today, but when I could go whenever I want. I would go every week, sometimes twice a week, sometimes more. So I don't get to enjoy that aspect of planning a trip to Disneyland. Except we did feel that a little bit when we went to Disneyland Paris. Porkins, longtime supporter of Fresh Bake, says that his day begins as he first sees the floral Mickey from inside the gate, and seeing it from the outside through the bars doesn't cut it. I think that a lot of people would agree with you, Porkins, that floral Mickey does represent significantly the beginning of something. And we're going to touch on that here in a minute as I, cover this in more detail about how I feel when I go to the park, and really what Walt Disney wants you to feel when you enter the park. And then we've got Jeffrey Underwood, who says that his day always starts at great moments with Mr. Lincoln. I think we need to do a wellness check on Mr. Underwood, because nobody has ever said that ever. I'm pretty sure. Jeffrey, are you sure? Are you sure? I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Lincoln, but wow, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do besides going to that show. You got to be a big fan of the man from Illinois. And then finally, I've got Frank Waldman, who says that his day really begins when he goes under the bridge and hears the music and the whistle of the train, sees the posters and the signs, smells the candy and the food. And Frank, that is the closest one to my experience when you enter Disneyland. And let me talk about that, because there is something about going to Disneyland, and I think this is a feeling that we all probably share. I mean, we may have different ways for when our day begins, but I think a lot of us share the feeling of when you go to Disneyland that nothing else matters, that you've left, and they say that. I mean, he literally says that in the plaque when you walk through the tunnel, that you're leaving your world and entering another, and it's those aren't just words. Though that wasn't just something that he says, that he wrote on a speech for opening day and put on a plaque above the tunnel. That's not an empty comment. It's a literal feeling. And I feel like I can say that safely and confidently, because I feel it every single time I go to Disneyland. Every single time. And I feel it explicitly, to the point where you could identify it. For me, anyway, and that's why I asked that question. When does it happen for you? When does that moment happen for you? And I think because, we went to the park or go to the park every week, that we don't get to experience it the same way. Some people, for example, their day starts when they arrive at the parking structure and they get on the tram. And that is a magical thing. Riding the tram is, for some people, as important, as good as any ride in the park. For others, it's the walk through the Esplanade. For some, it might be going through the turnstile and hearing that little bird chirp, that positive sign that you're in, as opposed to the womp womp that you get sometimes if your pass isn't good, but I don't want to get into that. Or seeing, like Porkins said, the floral Mickey. There's a lot of different ways that you can. You know what? I read a good one. I didn't mention it in the comments here, but I remember reading one. Now I've forgotten it, which one it was. I wish I had mentioned it specifically. But riding down the 5 freeway. when I was a kid, riding down the 5 freeway and seeing the Matterhorn off to the left before you exited to go into the park. That's a good moment. That's a big moment, and it's even better if you're not a local, because for locals here, seeing the Matterhorn off the 5 is a common. Well, it used to be. It used to be a common thing. It's not so much anymore because they built up around it to the point where you can barely see it now. You really have to be looking for the Matterhorn to spot it. But that used to be a really big thing. Just driving by, and then it would kick off all those thoughts and all those memories of going to Disneyland, seeing the Matterhorn from the 5. Man, that was something. Now, for me personally, having said all those things, I can tell you that unlike some, I'm actually the opposite when it comes to things like the tram, or the Esplanade, or even going through the turnstiles. Those things actually give me anxiety. I don't feel, when I'm parking, when I'm getting on the tram, I enjoy the actual tram ride, but I don't enjoy getting onto getting into the parking structure, getting onto the tram, or the bus for that matter if you park at Toy Story. I don't enjoy particularly walking through the Esplanade or downtown Disney, because it's all prelude to, we're not there yet, and I'm feeling anxiety because I know that there's people still feel that rush and that push, and I don't like when people are pushy. That's a thing for me. I don't like people in my space. Thank goodness for social distancing these days, because I don't like people in my space. I don't like it when they, just going through the turnstile, that level of impatience that people have. Did you know what's funny? Going through the turnstile is, at worst, 15 to 20 minutes. That's if I timed it, remember, during the Rise of the Resistance. That's if it goes all the way back to the DCA entrance. Worst case scenario, 20 minutes. You see a line maybe to where the potted area is just before you get into the Esplanade proper, the center of the Esplanade, and people start panicking. Oh my God, look at that line. That line's 3 or 4 minutes. And you can just feel the people pushing and trying to get around you and find the shortest possible line, and they get impatient, and you hear the huffs and the puffs because somebody's pass didn't work, or they're blacked out, or they're having whatever, the pictures. People lost their minds. They lost their minds when Disney decided they were going to start taking pictures of people as a way of preventing theft of the multi-day passes. All of that, with pictures included, still just takes a few minutes, but you can just feel it. You can feel that, around you, and it drives me nuts. So while it is a pleasurable thing to enter Disneyland, but it does sort of kind of go away when you get through the gate and you hear the bird, and you hear the whistle, and see the floral Mickey. And if you're lucky, a train goes by. If the train goes by while I'm walking in, then I've started. Okay, that's a good thing for me. Or back in the day, gosh, do you guys remember back in the day when the Disneyland band, the old Disneyland band, not the new Disneyland band, would perform out in front of the entrance with Mary Poppins, and sometimes Mad Hatter, and they would do a little thing, and they get the crowd involved. It was just all sort of ad lib or improv. God, I love that. I loved walking through the gate and hearing and seeing that happen out there in front of Flora Mickey. We don't get to see that anymore. That's a thing that never happens. Why do they? It bums me out. So many of the things that I miss most. I'm sidetracked here, but so many things that I miss most are live entertainment. Things that happen spontaneously. They pop up in the parks, and I miss that kind of stuff. I miss, the Minnie's Fly Girls at DCA at Grizzly Peak. Minnie's Fly Girls was a great show. I don't even have video of that anymore. I lost it. Anyway, for me, barring hearing the train or seeing the train go by before you enter or go under the tunnel, for me, it all happens in that moment. God, it's so literal too. That moment when you pass under the bridge, you look at the sign, here you leave today and enter a world of fantasy and tomorrow and etc. You go through the tunnel, and then it's revealed to you. Town Square is just revealed to you, and it's just thinking about that now. I miss it so much. because that moment, it's so perfectly literal that you may, because I've got baggage. We've talked about this before. We've all got baggage before we enter the park. But as soon as you go through that tunnel and you start to hear maybe the straw hatters, or you hear the sound of the vehicles, the clip clop of the horse-drawn streetcar or the omnibus horn. You see a character. You see Mickey. You see Cruella de Vil. And the chatter of people and the sounds of their, getting ready for that Disneyland day. Sorry. I forget everything. I forget everything. And that's why I call it so often the portal of happiness. Because it's like going through a portal. Like it's like a thing that transports you from one place to another in a literal sense. It's like going through some kind of machine that changes you. I know I'm rambling now because I've lost my track because I'm so emotional. If I'm not already there by the time I've gotten to the town square and the flagpole, if I'm not already there, then that walk up Main Street is the finishing touch, because there's even more. Oh my gosh, the sounds of, like, again, the vehicle. I love the vehicle traffic on Main Street, especially when they cross paths. I don't know what it is about that, but that really moves me. Seeing that happen, watching an omnibus go by. You're on the omnibus and you see another omnibus, or maybe, the fire truck or something go by, and everybody's waving at each other. And it's just so magical because people are a completely different species because you don't do that in your car when you're driving around on Beach Boulevard or wherever it is, your major street where you live. You don't just start waving at strangers through your window, but you do when you're at Disneyland, because you're having that shared experience, and that shared experience is reaching you, touching you so personally. And it's delivered nowhere. It's not delivered any better. That experience, that feeling, it's not delivered any better anywhere in the park besides Town Square and Main Street. It is the very essence of Disneyland, the very definition of Disneyland. It is, as Walt said, I think he called it the heartline of the park of America. So if I haven't forgotten everything that's going wrong in my life at Town Square, I will have by the time I reach the hub, for sure. All of this is by design. And that's why we have so much respect for the nostalgia of the park, and why we don't want them to ever change Town Square and Main Street. You may not know why you feel that way. You may not know why you're offended that they would try to put something into the Main Street Opera House Main Street Cinema that doesn't belong there. But the reason is because of how you feel, how that part of the park makes you feel, and you don't want that to be interrupted at all, because its original design was perfect. Walt said he wanted you to feel like it was an escape, a literal escape, like going to the movies or going to a theater production, and walking through that turnstile. Okay, so I've said this before in a video, but I'm gonna try to break it down in a whole separate video, which maybe I'll link to. But I'll try to break it down for you as succinctly as possible in a few bullet points. The red bricks on the ground as you pass pass through the gate represent the red carpet of, let's say, like a movie theater. That's your red carpet entrance into the show. Floral Mickey is the MGM lion, as it were. And then walking through the tunnel these are the trailers. Okay, those posters that you see are the trailers before the movie starts. As you get prepared, then you come through and the movie has started. Once you enter Town Square, the movie has started for you, but it's not the movie proper. It's just the beginning of the movie. A lot of movies begin with a helicopter shot, an establishing shot of some sort, telling you where you are. And this is why I spend so much time at the Disneyland Railroad, up on those steps at the Main Street station, so I can look down on Town Square and Main Street. That shot is the establishing shot for Disneyland, the setting, as it were. And then you walk down Main Street, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, but this is the way I see it. All of the Disney legends that you see, given respect on the windows, the Main Street windows, are the credits. Okay, the opening credits to the film. And then as you walk down Main Street, you reach the hub. Now your adventure is going to be, what kind of movie What kind of show, what kind of experience do you want to have today? Do you want to have an adventure? Do you want to go to the Old West? Do you want to have a fantasy, or do you want to have a futuristic sci-fi experience? That's why those lands were set up the way they were, to give you a film-like experience. And then the rest is up to you. It's perfect. It's perfect. Nobody's been able to recreate that. They've tried. They've even said they've ignored it. When they built DCA, they said to hell with all of that, and they built okay, I'm sidetracked again. But they built the thing that Walt didn't want to build, you know, a carnival or a boardwalk experience. The entrance, town square, Main Street, the hub are perfection. It is, that's how our day begins. And it's just such a beautiful thing that I'm so appreciative and so grateful that they got it right in this way. And I wish to God, I hope to God, they never ever change it. Not even the most minimal of details. I realize they have already. There are things about that place that have changed, and we could do a whole topic on that as well. But it still holds the same essence. Just don't do things like they did at the Main Street Cinema. All right, so I think I've gone over my allotted time for this discussion. Before we wrap, I got some corrections and retractions from yesterday's show. Somebody reminded me that NASCAR is already up and running. I didn't know that, actually. You know, because I kind of did a search to see what sports were happening, where certain sports were, but I didn't. I'm not a NASCAR fan, I guess, so maybe that's why I didn't come to the forefront. But NASCAR is they're having an event, I think, this coming weekend. They're having an actual NASCAR race this coming. No crowds, of course, but they are racing. The UFC fight that I talked about last week was not at the private island. It was in Florida. Now they have a private island. They are going to hold events there, but this one that they held last weekend wasn't on that private island. Somebody confirmed for me or clarified, or a few people did, that the June reservations haven't been canceled. They're just not taking anymore, and they're now only taking reservations for July 1st. Now, I'm not sure why that would be. That is a curious thing. And finally, somebody said that swab testing can be done in a few minutes. I had asked how long does it take to do a test. If you have the certain kind of swabs, not the cotton swabs, but another kind, a testing swab, you can get a result in 5-15 minutes. Some said a few hours, some said a few days. It just depends on what kind of test you're getting. So there you go, corrections and retractions. All right, with that, I'm going to ask you guys this question for our next episode. You may have heard Universal recently sent out a survey to its pass holders or people who are on their mailing list or whatever, and we're going to talk about that survey. But it made me, one question I want to ask you is, what is most important to you that Disney does in order to make things better in the park? What would they have to do in order for you to visit the park? Notwithstanding, let's say, a vaccine. Okay, now I'm not talking about anything happening outside. For some people, that's the bottom line. They're not going to go until there's a vaccine, and so there's nothing that Disney could do to bring you in. But if there were something that Disney could do, what would it be for you? For some, for example, would be limiting park capacity. For others, it might be ensuring that every ride is open, that they don't want to see any rides closed. So think about that and let us know in the comments below. And as always, if you have any questions, let us know. Actually, I did have one. Now that you mention it, there was one question that I got from the Shanghai video that I wanted to answer. And the question was, are they using virtual queues? And the answer is, I don't know. I'm not sure because, well, I would say that it's possible and likely I don't have any evidence of this because there's no video and nobody reporting on it, but it's possible and likely that they used one, or they used them for Soarin'. But otherwise, I don't think they had to. But I think it's likely that they use one, and that would answer what would they do with all those people. Nothing. They're out in the park. So that answers that question that I had about Soarin'. I'll put that to you, Fresh Baked. Maybe you guys can do a little investigative reporting for me. I'm always open to that. So there you go, guys. If you have any more questions about that, let us know in the comments below. Let us know your thoughts on what Disney could do to help encourage you to come back to the park. And until next time, guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. I would very much appreciate it if you haven't already. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. That lets you know that you got a new video from Fresh Baked. And then otherwise, thanks for watching, guys. We love you very much, and we'll see you next time. Fresh Baked.